I'm here today to talk about the impact of animal agriculture on climate change and other planetary boundaries. And the goal of this talk is to give you a brief overview of the situation that we find ourselves in and the major role the food system actually plays and the massive potential of transforming the food system. So let's see where we are at on our spaceship Earth. We are traveling through time towards us, and we have left the Holocene quite some time ago, and we have moved into the so-called Anthropocene. It's a period of time where humanity has become a driving force of change on this planet, planetary force of change, actually. And as we move further and further, you can see through mainly greenhouse gas emissions and the degradation of our biosphere. So those two are the major driving forces that are pushing us further and further over this planetary threshold and down into this so-called hothouse Earth state where we risk tipping point after tipping point, and it will be incredibly hard to get out. So it might take us thousands, millennia to get out of there back again. And those two dynamics, the human emissions and the biosphere degradation, they are actually also 2 of 9 planetary boundaries. They are called core boundaries, and we will get to that later, sorry. You see on the left the alternative that we have. If we manage to become stewards of the Earth system, we can still manage to push Earth into a so-called stabilized Earth state. So these are the 9 planetary boundaries, 2 of which we already addressed. You see on the top left. And those planetary boundaries represent 9 processes that regulate the stability and resilience of the Earth system. And scientists have been doing science on this framework since 2009, and continuously they've been developing it, and more and more research is coming out every year. And I think it's the best tool that we currently have to assess the state of our planet. And as you can see, it's not looking that great. There's a lot of red. And sadly, there's been a major study also this month about ocean acidification, and they assessed that ocean acidification, which you see here, is still in the green in the safe operating space. They assessed that it's been breached already 5 years ago. So we will see a major correction to that. So that's why I write 7 planetary boundaries are already crossed. And yeah, again, we have the core boundaries, and if just one of those boundaries is transgressed for too long, then the planet can become uninhabitable. So let's take a closer look at climate change. I chose a different coloring to highlight the progress into the different risk zones, and you can see that it's also looking not that great. As we all know. And since we're here today to talk about the food system and the more specifically the role of animal agriculture, the contribution of animal agriculture to climate change, I'm sure you're all aware of that, is mainly the emissions from the animal metabolism, the manure, the fertilizer production, the slash and burn practices. We all know that. But something that we don't know that well are the carbon opportunity costs. So this means the missed climate saving potential that we are missing out on if we chose to practice animal farming instead of regenerating carbon sinks. And it's very, very relevant because it's just using up so much land. And it's something, and this practice of animal farming is something that we don't depend on for survival anymore in many regions of the world. And yeah, we just have to look at that. And a study by the Oxford University from 2018 and 2019, it did just that, and they concluded that animal agriculture contributes 28% to climate change every year. So let's take a quick look at this study from the Oxford University. It's really sad. There's a really sad thing about this study. Many of you are probably familiar with the study from 2018 from Poor and Nemecek, and where the 83% of farmland number comes from, and the 18% of calories. And they made an additional study that came out just a year after. So it's called an erratum. So a change, and they have this number of 28%, but nobody knows about it, and everybody has this number of 14.5% in their head from the FAO, which is a massive undercount, really. And it's done a lot of damage in the past maybe 15 years since the study from FAO came out. So we see the three main contributors: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, and then also massive carbon opportunity costs, as you can see here. So really, really crucial that we address that. And also really crucial is that we address methane. It's much more powerful than CO2, as we all know, and 32%, some studies say even 40%, comes from animal agriculture. And sadly, also here, we have this problem that the global warming potential of methane is always used for a 100-year period, which is really a problem because methane disintegrates after 12 years. And so if we use a 100-year time frame, for almost 90% of the time, we are counting the methane just as carbon dioxide. And so we are watering down the effect of methane a lot. And you can basically say that over a 10-year period, methane is more than 100 times as powerful as CO2. So it's really, really a strong driver. Then quickly, let's take a look at biodiversity or biosphere integrity, as they call it here. And a misconception I hear a lot is that biodiversity loss is caused by climate change. But this is totally wrong. Climate change and biodiversity loss are two different phenomena that are reinforcing each other, positively reinforcing each other. And this is a very devastating dynamic. So it's called a positive feedback loop. And so the worse climate change gets, the worse biodiversity loss gets. And then biodiversity loss is, again, causing more climate change. So, for example, if you take a coral reef and you take out all the big fish, then they cannot hunt the smaller fishes who graze on the algae that is covering the coral. So the coral reef gets covered by algae and gets smothered, and then eventually releases even more carbon, which then causes more corals to die. So just really quick, the contribution of animal agriculture to biodiversity loss. It's really by far the number one driver. We have to be very clear about that. And the number one cause of biodiversity loss is actually land system change, which is in itself a planetary boundary. So just the complete changing of the landscape is obviously much more damaging to the biodiversity than climate change. Then we have another planetary boundary that's playing a major role, and this is the biogeochemical flows on the bottom. And yes, also extremely damaging, these emissions from the point of emission. So let's say on the field where they put the manure, and then it seeps into the groundwater, it seeps into the smaller streams, the rivers, then ends up in the oceans as an ocean dead zone. And yeah, then we have pesticides, the emergence of animal epidemics, like the bird flu, actually, which is a really, really huge problem. So we see bird flu now from pole to pole in wild birds everywhere, and it's really, really dangerous situation. And yeah, then also obviously you have wherever humans go to farm animals, they come into conflict with wild animals. So it's usually the predators who have to go first, which is also really, really bad for biodiversity. And something that gets overlooked as well a lot, and we can't even begin to cover it here, is fishing. And fishing is the number one cause of biodiversity loss in our oceans. And I can recommend watching the new film from David Attenborough, Ocean, on that subject. So yeah, here we have this this graphic. I'm sure many of you also know it, and it shocks me every time I see it. So we have the mammalian biomass. So all the mammals, they counted the biomass on the planet, and shockingly, 62% of that is so-called livestock animals. Then 34% are we humans, and then only 4% are wild mammals. So, and the crazy part is we are even taking the marine mammals in there too. So we're comparing the wild, land, and marine mammals to the biomass of us humans and the farmed animals that we raise. And yeah, it's pretty easy to assess that this is not a healthy relationship with nature. Okay, finally, the last planetary boundary we will look at is land system change. And it's really vital to understand the importance of this boundary because it's highly interconnected with so many other planetary boundaries, especially biodiversity loss and climate change. As we heard before, the number one contribution of animal agriculture to land system change is actually, it's the number one cause of land system change. So around 3/4 of land system change have been caused by animal agriculture, and most of this is deforestation. And I chose to use this comment here, this quote from George Monbiot. He's an author and activist from the UK. And he says, land use, I believe, is the most important of all environmental metrics. The land we use for extractive industries, of which farming uses by far the most, is land that can't be used for ecologically and carbon-rich ecosystems, wild forests, wetlands, savannas, etc. And I think that sums it up brilliantly. Just to give you some numbers, so here we see that we have 71% habitable land on the planet. 50% of that we use for agriculture, and of that, again, we use more than 80% to produce animal meat and milk and eggs. And in return, we just get 18% of the global calorie supply, which is pretty crazy to me, and also only just a little bit more than 1/3 of the protein supply. And if we look at it the other way, so if we look at the land that where we grow crops for human consumption, actually it's just 17%, and we get more than 80% of the calories from that, and almost 2/3 of the protein supply. So this really shows us how efficient it is to grow crops directly for human consumption, and how inefficient it is to use animals. And I will show you the reason for this inefficiency later. And here's another depiction of just how much land these individual animal products actually take up on our planet. And yeah, I think it's really hard to put into words how vast actually the land is that we choose to use for these products. And actually, I don't know, it's always painful to see. So to show you the potential of a vegan diet, we could reduce the amount of land we use for agriculture by 3/4, so 75%. And we can give back that land to nature. We can prepare for the climate shock waves that are about to come and make our food system more resilient and more efficient. And I just want to show you this note from this tweet from a famous climate scientist, and I showed it to. So what you see in the back is a Brazilian rainforest that's being deforested, actually, obviously. And I showed this tweet to a very important person in the Brazilian climate delegation last year, and told him, like, okay, here you see is really high-level climate scientist, and he's saying the Amazon has passed the tipping point, and he said, no, Maximilian, this can't be right. It's impossible. The Amazon is not anywhere near a tipping point. And just coming out of an event where they said they need to boost livestock production in Brazil and South America, and they need to boost efficiency of livestock production. And so they are actually planning to increase animal agriculture still, which is completely insane in the situation that we find ourselves. And just really quick, the reason why this is so insane is actually the so-called 10% law. And it basically shows us how much energy we lose along the food chain. So on the bottom, you see trophic levels, and they represent the position of an organism in the food web. Bottom left, we see producers. They store chemical energy from the sun, pass the energy on to the primary consumers, which is ideally us humans. But as we all know, sadly, it's mostly farmed animals. And then when we humans decide to eat those animals, we only get 10% from the energy from the plants. So this shows you how inefficient this is. Even modern combustion engines that we humans built are more efficient, actually. And 90% of the energy is lost to the environment through respiration, digestion, and excretion, and we get all these harmful co-products like methane, manure, and so on. And good way to look at farmed animals is really to see them as highly inefficient bioreactors. And the problem is that every year we use around 100 billion of these highly inefficient bioreactors, and that's causing a lot of damage. And just really quickly, this is animal agriculture in the United States. You see the inputs on the left, and you see on the right how much people get actually out of it. So it's very, very low numbers. And what's particularly striking is the extremely low number for beef. So this is the most inefficient way to produce food, and also extremely harmful, as we know. And an overall conversion efficiency of 7%, actually. And I don't know in the business world where we would accept such an enormous inefficiency anywhere else. I don't think so. And to me, the conclusion is very, very simple, that we must become primary consumers in order to minimize our impact on the Earth system as much as possible. So we urgently need to move over to the primary consumer side. This is the award ceremony for animal agriculture's impact on planetary boundaries. So you see quite dubious award ceremony. But it takes a lot of firsts and a really solid second at climate change. And this is my conclusion. Yeah, it's really if we don't get the food system right, then the rest also really doesn't matter that much. And I want to end it on a positive, on a hopeful note. So just last year, a study concluded that it is possible to respect all planetary boundaries with an 81% and 73% respectively for 8 billion and 10.4 billion people. But we need a fossil-free energy system and an essentially vegan diet. So this really shows you that these demands, these actions are on par with each other. So they are not number one or number second. So we need both to survive. And here I have some literature recommendations. We have some safe and just reports for you to grab. And that's it. Sorry for the...
Thank you so much, Max.
Extension.
Thank you so much.